Good evening, folks. My name is Terrell Harris, and welcome to Introduction to Social Media for Ministry. For those who don't know me, I can be found at Mr. Terrell Harris on Twitter, can be found on theopenbox.com, and I am glad that you are all with me. So, what this particular session is going to be about is um, we're going to run through some of the basics for social media as it relates to doing ministry online. I know in my years of experience and just seeing how churches and how we particularly do ministry as a religious community, I think oftentimes we only post announcements and post some of the things that our churches are doing. But as I go through this particular presentation, we'll see some of the different ways in which we could actually reach those people who are online. And we'll see some of the amazing statistics as it relates to some of the consumption of information and data that is online. So let's start back up our presentation and we'll go through it. So for me, like I said, for those who do not know me, my name is Terrell Harris. I have roughly 14 years of experience in information technology. I recently graduated from Wesley Theological Seminary. That's this past May 2014. And I've also obtained a social media management certification from Georgetown University in 2014 as well. So this particular slide right here, it will show you some of the growth as I was on Twitter. So on the far left-hand side, you'll see, I started off, and then you'll see a very, very high spike. So from, I guess this was 2010 to roughly 2011 in June, I acquired roughly 22,000 followers. What I'll do is actually give you a live version of this so you could all see it a little bit better. We'll go through. All right, so here's the live version. So from actually roughly November 2012 to about July 2013, I went on this crazy mission to gather as many Twitter followers as I can. Basically, what happened was I was doing some technology for a former church that I was at, and they had an interest in terms of growing their online presence. And somebody in the church mentioned Twitter, and I really wasn't on Twitter too much. I did a lot of stuff on Facebook. I believe at that time, I'm not sure, maybe I was on Instagram, but Facebook was still my primary means for any communication. And with Facebook, generally speaking, it's more used for people that you know. A lot of people don't let too many strangers in their circle on Facebook. So I decided to go on Twitter, and one of the youth pastors out here in the Maryland area said he particularly liked Twitter because he realized a lot of his students were online, and if he could just say one positive thing to them per day, or if they would only to get one positive message, he would be satisfied. So I really went in and went kind of crazy with it, to where during this time period, I think I got suspended roughly 4 or 5 times for aggressive following, because Twitter has particular rules on that. So going through my followers list, you could see some of their interests. You could see 37% of them are interested in basketball, DJs. Now, for whatever reason, I got latched on to a lot of teens and young adults. I'm not sure how exactly it happened, but for some strange reason, I found myself in a circle of younger people. So you'll see the top interest is hip hop, pop, music. Cities are pretty scattered across the United States and the globe, actually. And then you see there's a pretty even split between male and female gender. And then these are some of the followers I follow who have we have the same followers in common. So let's go back to the slide presentation. So the start of social media, I would say, from my personal perspective, starts with the Gutenberg printing press. And this was the first printing press made by Johannes Gutenberg in the late 1300s, to where there was movable type. Um, Prior to movable type, engravings were made using woodcuts. And Gutenberg is also responsible for publishing the first typed Bible in 1455. And he never made money off the invention because he was subjected to foreclosure and he had to, pay his debt. So there's no money off his amazing invention that enabled us to spread messages via books, magazines, and newspapers. So what is social media? In a nutshell, social media is a conversation supported by online tools, whether it's laptops, tablets, or cell phones. Here are some of the tools that we use for social media. This is not all of them. This is not a comprehensive list, but this is particularly the ones that that stand out to me. You have YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, Tumblr, Instagram. And statistics say that 27% of all time spent on the internet is spent on social networks. So how many people are using social media? Now these statistics change yearly, and they're going up every year. So you have approximately 2 billion internet users in the world, and 7 billion people in the world, and 1.5 billion people are using social networks. Consumption. In the U.S., 16 minutes out of every hour is spent on social networks. 56% of American adults now own a smartphone of some kind. 79% of adults between the ages of 18 and 24 are using smartphones. 81% of adults between the ages of 25 and 34 are using smartphones. So just to put a pin in this particular slide right here, what you'll notice is that with people also being online, there's more of a move to smartphone technology. So if you're doing any ministry or anything online, even if you're doing stuff for a small business or for business in general, you have to be sure that your websites are smartphone compatible or responsive. This way, when people visit your site on their cell phone, you want to be sure that there's limited amount of scrolling and zooming. And actually, some websites, there's technology for WordPress and other applications like that will adjust if they find or see the code on your website, or what they do is pull the code from your phone, and they will adjust the resolution automatically. 65% of social networking takes place on cell phones, as we see. So that statistic is pretty alarming, because that means most people, when they use Facebook or Twitter or anything like that, are doing it on their phones. So as we think about ministry and think about how we're actually reaching this particular generation and just people in our congregations, or just people in general who may also be in church, we may want to consider reaching or reaching out to them through their phones, and understanding that ministry is not necessarily done the same way, or can't continue to be done the same way as it was in the past. So 73% of online adults use social networking sites, and 89% of 18 to 29-year-olds use social media. So these are some more online statistics. As you see, in the last 8 years, social media usage over all internet users has skyrocketed from 8 to 73%. So here in 2006 on the left, 2006 way on the left-hand side, you'll see all age ranges are actually going up. You even see the light blue line here, 65 and up. You'll see that the grandparents are getting online too, in particular, to communicate with their families and see their grandchildren and their children growing up. So you can see this spike that everybody is actually getting online and using social media overall. Now here's, when I first seen this particular slide, this slide alarmed me mainly because you can see the amount of data being consumed and shared every 60 seconds. So we'll start with Facebook. There's 347,000 plus likes on Facebook every 60 seconds. So every minute, roughly 347,000 people, or yeah, roughly 347,000 people, or 347,000 likes are happening. So the like button is being clicked a ton of times in 60 seconds. You'll see with LinkedIn, there's over 9,000 searches per 60 seconds, over 17,000 profile views. Twitter, 120,000 tweets every 60 seconds. So, as you know, people who tend to try to spread a good message or good news or get information, we have to ask ourselves, are we a part of this particular conversation with all of these tweets going out? And I think for us, it's something that we need to look at and something that we need to address, because as you'll see later, there's a ton of negative information in this, massive information that's being put out on Twitter. You'll see there's 660 accounts created. Some of these accounts are spam. Some of them are bots. Some of them are real. But there's still a lot of accounts created on Twitter. Right here it says 1 of every 7 minutes is spent online is on Facebook, which is absurd. So, that's just amazing. You can see how many photos are shared on Facebook. Google searches every 60 seconds. There's 2 million Google searches. YouTube. If you're doing ministry and you're not shooting video or putting video online, I think you may be a couple of steps behind as well. Because as you see, in 60 seconds, 48 hours of video is being uploaded. That is amazing right there. 48 hours of video every 60 seconds. So I know I do a lot of research and looking around at church websites, and it's, I understand the technology behind it, because I've also done audio and video for roughly 7 or 8 years, and I think some ministries or some churches get bogged down on trying to have a super production, but I think the message is a little bit more important than the production. So even if the quality of your videos are not super professional, I think you will also still have a good chance to reach somebody online, because once you put the message out, a good message will connect with the audience regardless of the quality of the video. So as churches and as church leaders, we shouldn't be scared to put video online, especially now with the way people are actually looking for churches. Typically they'll do a Google search. You'll see they're in that that query. They'll do a Google search. They'll find your website, and then what they'll also do is look to see if you have any video or audio sermons. So you can see how much activity is actually being spread every 60 seconds. So for me as an African American, I wanted to see some of the stuff African Americans were doing online, and there are 23.9 million active African Americans on the internet. 76% of which visited a social media networking or blog site. And this is from a 2011 Nielsen report entitled The State of the African American Consumer. Again, just to break down, some more of the statistics, you can see how many users are on Facebook, and you can see how many photos are being shared. 72 million likes per day, 144 million friends requests, and 216 million messages sent per day. Just a lot of information being shared. Twitter, again, see how many users there are. Over 645 million. The average person spends almost 13 minutes a day on Twitter. 500 plus million tweets every day. Again, most people are on their cell phones, and the average user has 208 followers. YouTube, just tremendous amount of data being consumed via video. Um, and actually, this slide is a little bit newer. You'll see that on this particular slide, it says 100 hours of video uploaded every minute, so that it even increased, which is actually pretty scary. Let's pay attention to this on the right. 600 million videos are viewed using mobile. So you can see again, mobile is becoming very popular, and everything's, you know, being moved in a mobile direction. And 6 billion hours of YouTube, 6 billion hours of video are watched each month, which is amazing as well. So this next particular section is, you know, as it relates to Twitter. Like I said, I do a lot of my reaching out to people who I don't necessarily know on Twitter, and you know, as the church and as religious leaders or spiritual leaders, we have to take a look at how society or how pop culture is communicating with each other and communicating with, you know, society in general. And then we also have to take a look at how we ourselves as religious leaders are actually communicating. So I just went and did some random searches. Now these numbers change all the time, so I'm pretty sure some of these people have more followers. But you know, you know, you may be laughing at this top left-hand side over here where I have Oprah as a religious leader, but she is, you know, I would consider her a spiritual thought leader, and clearly she has the most massive following out of everybody. And she still doesn't touch people in the pop culture. So you can see like Lady Gaga has 41.2 million followers. You know, you see Rihanna, Kanye West, Beyonce, you know, has, you know, over 13 million followers, and she doesn't even really tweet. You can see Justin Bieber, of course, has 50 million followers. But then, you know, for religious leaders, our followings, you know, aren't really that high. We don't tend to attract or go get people as it relates to, you know, following people on Twitter. And I think these were probably the most heavily followed accounts that I could particularly find as it relates to religious leaders. So this is why we're needed online. I come across, like I said, a ton of negative information, a ton of negative imagery, and you know, this particular image was a little disturbing to me because you could see, let's count, we have the person who took the pictures, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people recording this on their phone. Clearly these individuals are having a real fight, and this particular image was shared, I would say, shared and liked over 1,000 times. So you can see the spread of negative information and negative data, and you can see that the interest is not in breaking up the fight or spreading peace. The interest is in recording the information and spreading it because they want to either see somebody get hurt or see somebody get knocked out, or you know, they're just into the violence of the particular act. So we have to ourselves get online to say, you know what, some of this stuff is just not cool. Another one here, you know, these two individuals in a fight, and it's crazy that this guy on the right hand side would get to, you know, he would go all means to capture this particular image. And you know, we may think it's crazy, but you know, especially since I'm a photographer as well, I think we as adults or just older people or people who are more mature need to really kind of check into this stuff, because you know, if you would go that far out, you know, for a photograph of a fight, I suspect I suspect this individual has some sort of gift in photography. Even the person who actually took the picture and captured the individuals fighting and the individual on the ground. Like, although this image is violent, I would say that it's a it's a pretty good photograph or capture of what's going on, and it has to be somebody online to say, you know what, this is not the way you should be using your God-given talents. And I think we should be online, letting these people know, letting these younger people know that there are other ways to go about, using your gifts as opposed to just filming fights and uploading them online and Twitter and Facebook and things along those lines. So now we'll take a look at my feed. Um, and like I said, with my feed, if you have any problems with pornography or anything like that, I don't know what's going to be on my timeline. Like I said, I have over 22,000 followers, and I get all types of stuff shared on my timeline. So we'll see what it is. But if you want to duck out or R-rated images or language bothers you, you may want to duck out for a couple of seconds as we go through this particular section. So we'll take my timeline here, and we'll just scroll through it. It's just, sometimes there's a lot of random information. Sometimes you'll get negative stuff. So you'll see this individual here says she's not feeling too well. And people tend to express their emotions online. So, what you could, the reason I particularly like Twitter is because, you could kind of get a pulse on society depending on who your followers are and how you go about, finding people online. I won't click on that because that's probably something crazy. Not sure what's going on here. And, you can just see a whole bunch of stuff. See, just a whole bunch of random information that tends to be bad. And, we didn't really... Oh, wait, here's something positive. And the reason I kind of changed the way I was going about doing this is because initially I got online and I started following a whole bunch of Christians. So for me as a minister, it didn't make sense to follow or speak to people who necessarily were already saved and sanctified, because everybody was just really quoting scripture passages and shooting out prayers. So I kind of widened my search a little bit just to see what was going on, and that's how I got kind of pulled into some of this stuff. And that's why I'm actually very passionate about it, because I just see how, especially teens, I see how teens actually are in church, and I think we have to find or figure out more creative ways to reach our teens and young adults. Just because sitting in a 2-hour service is probably not the most beneficial way to reach them. I know some of us as older people or maybe a little bit used to longer services and the messages, but even still, with us as, just say for instance, let's take this as an example. Your average preacher will preach maybe 25 plus minutes. You figure that somebody comes to church on Sunday, may come to church on Wednesday, maybe not, but you figure out that 25-minute message versus all of the information that they're taking in. Mind you, I read a statistic recently that said we get marketed to over 3,000 times a day. So you figure 3,000 marketing messages, all of this information being spread on social media, like the voice of the church will actually get drowned out at some given point. And I think unless we put ourselves in the arena where most of the conversation is happening, I think we do a disservice to ourselves, because we're putting ourselves behind the times and everything that's going on. So let's switch back to the PowerPoint presentation. So let's talk about influence and engagement. So a lot of Twitter sometimes is random, and I've actually engaged a couple of famous people and responded back. We did a YouTube hangout, and my wife and I, Brooke, we were talking about Erica Campbell's album cover, and she just happens to reply back and actually, you know, friend me or follow me on Twitter, which was I was shocked because the message wasn't directly to her, so I assumed that she may have even watched the video. So you could see, influence and engagement. Uh, it can happen, and we as the church can influence people on large levels. So again, we'll talk about influence and engagement on this slide. So you have Soledad O'Brien. She's a former CNN news anchor, and I reached out to her. I actually got her to follow me because of this idea. So I reached out to her, and this is when Instagram added video to their services. And what I suggested is that, hey, since she wasn't on CNN, maybe she could give us some 15-second news clips. And she said that was a good idea. And you can see that in June I said that, and then in July 2013 she was actually doing it. So just random influence that we could particularly have with individuals online. So I'll show you how this looks in a practical setting as well, because all of my engagement is not with celebrities. And if you have any questions, just hold them to the end, and what I'll do is I'll show you guys how to actually ask them. And let's go back to one second. Where we got? Did I close out? I want to go back to. Let me pull up this one timeline as it relates to engagement. Here we go. So here, this is what I mean by engagement, and it's not necessarily throwing Jesus at everybody every single minute. There's subtle ways where you can influence people, in a positive manner. So a few days ago, I guess roughly 2 weeks ago, one of my, I was going through my timeline just viewing, random tweets, and this person, just said, oh my gosh, she wanted to punch somebody in the face. So, simple message, that probably wouldn't be a good idea, and it would just cause more drama. And, and pretty much, I guess from her perspective, people are getting on her nerves these days. And, I let her know, that's cool, but you can't let anybody get you out of your zone or your peaceful place. And then that just kind of ended the conversation right there. She said true and thanks. So for us as people who want to spread the good news, I get that we want to spread the message of Jesus Christ, but we also want to be sure that these young people aren't doing anything to harm themselves or harm other people as well. So I think we have to insert our knowledge and our influence, that way as well, just by communicating with people we may not know. So let's take a look at some other ways social media influences society. So, there was a rally in D.C. for Trayvon Martin, a few years ago when he was murdered. And what I want to do is pull up the actual YouTube clip. Now, this particular rally was in D.C., and it was started online. I believe 4 young ladies, started a Twitter account, and they started a Facebook page, and they put this rally together. And I want to say it was roughly, in a few days, I think they got 16 or 6,000 people to actually come out, which is pretty amazing considering that all of what they did was online. So we'll take a look at this. And this is like I said, this is strictly from social media.
And I was called by some three dynamic sisters, three sisters who just wanted to do something in reference to Trayvon Martin case and wanted to be able to come and make their voices heard. And these three sisters just put together a Facebook account, a Twitter page, and put out a call, and all of you are here because of them. And we are so grateful for these three sisters. Because this rally was not done by any organization, it was not put together by any church. It was three regular sisters who came together and said, we have to make our voices heard. And that is the type of noise that we're going to make all over this nation. And so what I want to do in the spirit of this type of organizing is I want these sisters to come and to speak before you first, to let you know and to talk about why they have us here and why they felt it was so important for us to be here, to stand up for Trayvon Martin and stand up for justice all over the world. Come on, I need you to give them a hand. I need you to make their voices heard.
Hello, DC. Thank you for joining us. We are so humbled. Like, we are close to tears with the turnout because this is representative of the power that lies within you. We are not an organization. We don't have a list of fancy credentials, but when we lack the credentials, we made up for in passion. And every single person here can represent Trayvon Martin's family. What they're going through, what they're experiencing is incomprehensible, disgusting, cruel, and evil.
So I'll skip around a little bit so you can see some of what else is going on. Yeah, we got speakers. Speakers.
I felt my heart beating rapidly. It felt like my heart had jumped out of my.
And you know, the idea that social media could spark or do something like this is pretty amazing to me. And oftentimes you don't know how it's going to take effect. Sometimes you may have an event like this that you get a massive turnout. And other times you may not have a large turnout. But the idea is to be where the conversation is, and spread the message or spread to actually try to create a movement. And my idea is to try to create a movement of positivity. So I know I can't do it by myself, but I'm gonna try anyway, just because I'm crazy like that, I guess, sometimes. Let's see what else we have here as it relates to the slides. So there's another individual I want to talk about. Her name is Brittany Moses. She is a young individual I came across online. I believe she's either 22 or 23 now, and she started this movement called Unashamed Impact. And it's a young adult Christian movement. They are, I would say, evangelical, and they also go out into the community and do things. But roughly, I believe Brittany has amassed over 40,000 followers across the globe, and I'll play this particular video to show you what she's doing online as well.
The ministry that you mentioned was Unashamed Impact. And before I go into that, I am 22 years old. I am a mother, I am a wife, and Unashamed Impact is what I'm doing pretty much full time. But Unashamed Impact, like you said, it is very much a social media movement, but there is another side of it that is community outreach and everything. But it started off of social media. In July of 2012, so it's almost been 2 years, we started this movement online of just gathering young Christians. We saw that a lot of young Christians were tweeting about their walk, were tweeting about God, about Christ, and they were on fire for their faith. And that was very encouraging. And so for those who know Twitter, and I'm sure we'll go into this some more, we created a hashtag called Unashamed Impact. And what would happen is, young Christians would use that hashtag, every time they spoke out about Christ, and we started fellowshipping with each other online. And what we basically did was we took those, numbers of young Christians online, and we put them, kind of organize them into teams based off of their city, and took them offline and got them into the streets, got them fellowshipping with each other in reality, and it turned into a worldwide organization. Because when you're online, the world is at your fingertips, you're connecting with people all over, and it just really exploded, because that is what our whole generation is looking for. People are aged to connect with, who are hungry for Christ like we are, and will hold us accountable. So it's been awesome, and it's been all God. I mean, it couldn't be anything else but God at this moment.
All right, we have buffer issues, so that's a perfect time to stop. But basically, as I said, you know, she has roughly 40,000 members a part of this particular community, and you know, I've gotten on phone calls with her and the organization just to see what was going on, and they actually had people from South Africa on the call. You had people from Europe. So it, you know, as it relates to doing ministry online, I think, you know, she created something along with, you know, the move of the Spirit that is very beneficial to young people and, you know, people in her particular age range, because that's the way they communicate with each other. They do it online. They set up particular. They have, you know, different unashamed impacts in each city. So there's like a DMV one, there may be a Houston one or a Texas one, but it's in different cities. And as I said, it's not just about, you know, praying and having prayer calls. They actually do stuff in the community. So they'll volunteer, they'll feed the homeless, and this was basically started, you know, from a young individual who had a passion for Jesus and a passion for spreading the gospel, and also a passion for helping people, and it just you know, took off. So I think if we as the church in general would have this same passion and this same enthusiasm, and, you know, not be you know, scared or afraid of, you know, what actually is online, I think we could actually change the world and, you know, make a extreme positive impact. So let's head back over to the slideshow. So now what? As I said, the church, at least from my perspective, has to make a slight adjustment into how we do things. You know, like I said earlier, when I, you know, look at church websites or look at social media for churches, we do a great job of promoting our events. You know, we have flyers, we tell people when the service is, we, you know, show pictures of what's going on. Some of us actually, you know, will post a video, you know, of our messages. But we have to remember what Jesus did as it related to gathering disciples. So, you know, in Matthew 4, you know, we know Jesus goes and he appeals to Peter and his brother directly based on, you know, what they knew. So Peter and his brother, they were fishermen, so Jesus appealed to their senses, and he actually went to them to encourage them to be followers, his followers, or fishers of men. So the idea here, in terms of some of the ways we have to change, is we have to engage, you know, this younger community and this younger generation, or those people who are not in church, and you have to engage them where they were at. You know, Peter, you know, they were fishing someplace, and Jesus went and got them. So for us as, you know, leaders, if everybody's online, and everybody is online based on the earlier statistics, we have to go there to create fishers of men and women as well. So, you know, again, where have our nets gone? You know, today, you know, as I look at church, oftentimes we get in the church building, you know, we get in our congregations and we sit, and then we, you know, a lot of times we wait for people to kind of just show up in the building. Some, you know, some churches are good at doing outreach and evangelizing, but we have to, if we really want to change society, we're really gonna have to take a critical look at how we're reaching new people and gathering new members. Are we simply just, you know, having our current members reach out, Are we just letting them show up randomly, or are we actually going and fishing for people as Jesus did? So, this particular side, when I look at Jesus and just look at how he did things, of course he didn't have, the technology that we did. Everything he did had to be face to face, and then it was also word of mouth. But what we see is that Jesus actually took the good news directly to the people, and which made the gospel social. So as we go forth and look at how we want to engage people online, first and foremost, I think the thing that's most important is we have to listen and read what the people are crying out for or crying out about. Like I said, you saw my Twitter timeline to where people were upset with what was going on. Either they were aggravated for some reason. Some people did have, or some people do have good stories. But we first must listen and see what's going on before we kind of just hop in and force our messages on people. I think I started out just kind of throwing out scripture passages and throwing out messages and stuff like that, and I found that you get more an interaction with people when you just have regular conversations with them, and then you could actually kind of mix in the messages from the Bible or from sermons and stuff like that. And then like I said, after you listen, then you share your content. You want to be personal. Don't just post advertisements, because typically they're going to get ignored. And as it relates to Twitter, only 3% of tweets are actually read. So it's important to engage people or talk to them directly, because they have a large chance of missing your particular message. We also want to contribute meaningful information. So as we're engaging people, we also want to put out devotions, links to articles, and the key thing, which I kind of forget about as well, is ask questions. When you ask, what I've been doing over the last few days is just I've been trying to change up some of the things I do online. And I've asked the people, how many people are happy that God woke them up this morning, and if you're happy, retweet. And I've been getting, some amazing responses. And what I realize is, when you ask questions and engage people, they'll be more likely to pay attention to some of the things you're saying. And then you also have to be a little bit personal. I started out with just the logo and no face on Twitter. And because I was kind of apprehensive of putting any personal information out on Twitter, because I didn't want to have that link to Google searches or anything like that. But it wasn't working, so I took a risk. Something nudged me, and that's something I believe had to be God nudged me. It was like, go ahead and change this account to your name, put your face there, and get to work in it. And from that point on, I think my engagement has been a lot better. One of the things I also want to show you before I start taking some questions is I want to go. Let's see where we're going to go. I want to go back to my Twitter timeline and show you how many people are actually talking about prayer. So where we at? So here we see, I did a Google search for God Answers Prayer. So there is positive, messages being spread online. So here we'll have, God Answers Prayers. I'm so glad it worked out. Truly, God answers prayers. God always answers our prayers. So you see, people are actually, spreading a good message online, and people do realize God exists. But I think, with some of the negative information that's online, like these people, we also have to be the ones to combat some of that activity as well. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to open it up for questions. Let me switch back here. Now, if you want to ask questions and you're viewing it live, let me see if I can walk you all through this. If you go to the page, the event page, you should be able to click where it says Q&A, and they should be able to start typing in, some questions there. Oops, let me close myself out because I don't want to do double. So if there's anybody online that has any questions, let me know. If you're on Twitter, you can tweet me directly at Mr. Terrell Harris. That's Mr. MrTerrell HARRIS. And we'll see if we have any questions. I'll open the app to see if there's anything there. And if there aren't any questions, what I'll do is log off, and then you guys could contact me directly if you wanted to. If you had any further questions, I will give you my email address, but I'll just wait a couple of seconds to see if anybody had any questions. So there being none, if you wanted to get in contact with me, like I said, you can reach me directly on Twitter at Mr. Terrell Harris. You could also email me at Terrell, Terrell, M as in Mark, Harris, HARRIS @gmail.com. I'll take any of your questions. Hopefully this was helpful to you. Please visit our site, theopenbox.com, and I'll give you a couple more seconds to see if anybody online had any questions. And we'll give it a couple more seconds. Let me visit the page one last time to see if there's anything that popped up. All right. Not seeing any questions, I will close out. Peace and blessings to all and everything that you do. Like I said, you can reach me at Mr. Terrell Harris on Twitter, or by email at terrell.m.harris@gmail.com. Peace. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and please be sure to spread the video. Like I said, it will be on YouTube. It's streamed to YouTube directly. Spread the video to anybody you know who may be interested or who may actually need the help. Peace and blessings. Good night.